My phone rang 19 times at midnight. 19. I counted every single ring while I sat there drinking beer and watching them all go to voicemail. Same number calling over and over. Sarah Mitchell, the MIT graduate who'd taken my job 3 days earlier while they threw her a welcome party and escorted me out like some criminal. Let me back up. My name's Marcus Hayes, I'm 48 years old, and until 72 hours ago, I was the senior systems engineer at Grid Tech Solutions in Phoenix. The guy who built the smart grid system that keeps the lights on for 1.2 million people across the valley. Not the kind of job you'd notice unless something goes wrong. But when something does go wrong, people die. I spent 8 years in the Marines before getting into power systems engineering. Been with Grid Tech for 20 years, worked my way up from field tech to senior engineer. Built my reputation on getting things done right the first time. The smart grid project was my baby. 5 years of my life poured into creating something that could predict power outages before they happened, reroute power automatically during emergencies, and keep hospitals and nursing homes running no matter what Mother Nature threw at us. The system was revolutionary. Cut power restoration times by 25% and saved the city millions in emergency response costs. When Hurricane Isabella hit last year, we kept 98% of critical infrastructure online while other cities went dark for days. The mayor called it a miracle. I called it good engineering and 20 years of knowing how power grids actually work. Then Robert Sterling, our CEO, hired his niece. Just to help lighten your workload, Marcus, he said with that fake corporate smile. The board wants fresh perspectives on the project. Fresh perspectives. That's corporate speak for we don't trust the old guy who's been doing this successfully for decades. Sarah was 29, brilliant on paper, and had never worked a day in the real world. She'd show up to meetings asking questions like, "Wouldn't a more standardized approach be more efficient?" Easy to say when you've never had to keep the power on during a 115-degree summer day, when everyone's air conditioning is maxed out and the grid's screaming. But she was Sterling's niece, so everyone nodded along like she was some kind of genius. The writing was on the wall pretty quick. Sarah started showing up to meetings I wasn't invited to. She had access to my files, my documentation, my system architecture. When I worked late, which was most nights, she'd walk by with coffee, studying everything I did like she was cramming for finals. "You really should take better care of yourself, Marcus," she'd say, while basically stealing my life's work. I should have seen it coming. But after 20 years of loyalty, busting my ass through budget cuts and downsizing, you don't expect to get stabbed in the back by your own company. Stupid me. Day 1. The firing Sterling called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. Real professional setup. Him. Behind his big glass desk, HR lady taking notes. The whole corporate execution ritual. "We're pursuing alternative methodologies, Marcus," he said, not even looking me in the eye. "Someone with more contemporary approaches." Contemporary approaches. Code for, "We're replacing you with someone younger, cheaper, and related to the boss." I didn't beg, didn't argue. 20 years in the military and corporate world teaches you when a fight's already over. I just nodded and watched my career at Grid Tech die right there in that air-conditioned office. My daughter Emma starts college at Arizona State next year. I've been saving for her tuition for the past 10 years. Now what? They handed me a cardboard box and had security escort me out. Through the break room windows, I could see Sarah cutting into a welcome cake while everyone toasted her appointment as the new senior systems engineer. Sterling raised his glass higher, and I could read his lips. She'll fix Marcus's outdated mess. My mess. 5 years of flawless performance was apparently outdated. I sat in my pickup truck for a few minutes, watching the celebration continue through the windows. They'd been planning this for months. Sarah had been studying my system, learning my methods, getting ready to take over. Problem was, she didn't understand that my system wasn't just code and algorithms. It was experience. It was knowing that the North Grid behaves differently when the Diamondbacks have a home game. It was understanding that the downtown sector needs different protocols when it hits 110 degrees because people's behavior changes. You can't learn that from a textbook or a computer simulation. I drove home to my apartment. Emma was at her mom's house. We'd been divorced for 3 years now. No pets, no plants, just me and the echo of 20 years down the drain. I cracked open a beer and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. Day 2. The quiet. My phone stayed quiet the whole day. Not a single call from Grid Tech. They were probably celebrating their brilliant decision to modernize the department with fresh blood and contemporary approaches. I spent the day updating my resume and looking at job boards. Turns out there aren't a lot of openings for 48-year-old engineers, especially ones who just got canned from their last job. Ageism's alive and well in the tech world, even when you're the guy who built something nobody else understands. That evening, I called Emma to tell her what happened. "Dad, that's terrible," she said. "But maybe it's a blessing in disguise? You were always stressed about that job." Smart kid, gets that from her mother. But I couldn't tell her I was worried about paying for her college now. Day 3, the calls begin. Wednesday morning started normal enough. Coffee, job hunting, trying not to think about Sterling and Sarah celebrating their brilliant personnel move. Then around noon, my phone started buzzing. Sarah's name on the screen. I let it ring. Then another call an hour later. Then another. By 6 p.m. she'd called 7 times. No voicemails, no texts, just desperate calling. I was making dinner when Danny Rodriguez called. He was one of the few junior engineers who'd survived Sterling's cost-cutting measures over the years. "Marcus," he said, voice hushed like he was hiding in a bathroom stall. "Something's wrong." "What's wrong?" "The grid's acting weird. North sector's throwing errors. Sarah can't figure out. She's been trying to recalibrate all day, but it's getting worse." I didn't say anything. Just listened. "She keeps asking where your backup documentation is. Says the system's not responding to standard protocols." Of course it wasn't. My system wasn't built on standard protocols. "Sounds like a challenge for the new senior engineer," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Marcus, she's in way over her head. What if something major happens? Then she'll figure it out. She's got an MIT degree and fresh perspectives, remember?" Danny was quiet for a second. "This isn't funny, man. Real people could get hurt." That was when the calls from Sarah got serious. That night, Sarah called me 12 more times. 12. I sat on my couch with a beer, watching my phone light up every hour like clockwork. No voicemails, just ring after ring after ring. Around 10 p.m., I got curious and answered one. "Marcus, thank God," she said, sounding frantic. "I need to ask you about the North Sector protocols. I don't work there anymore," I said. "Remember?" "You do. Please, just a quick question about the load balancing algorithms." I hung up. The calls kept coming until midnight. That's when I started counting. Call 19 was when I finally turned the phone off and went to bed. But I couldn't sleep. Not because of the calls, but because Danny was right. Real people could get hurt if the grid went down. Day 4. Reality hits. Thursday morning brought 14 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I listened to them while making coffee. First voicemail. "Marcus, it's Sarah. The system's not responding like it should. Could you call me back?" Second voicemail. "Marcus, please, something's really wrong with the East Sector now too. Sterling's asking questions I can't answer." Third voicemail. "Marcus, I'm sorry about how everything happened, but people are going to get hurt if I can't figure this out." That last one got to me. Not because I felt sorry for Sarah, but because she was right about people getting hurt. My phone rang while I was listening to the voicemails. Danny again. "Marcus, you need to know what's happening here," he said, whispering. "The whole grid's going haywire. Sarah's tried everything she learned at MIT, but nothing's working. Sterling's in full panic mode. What kind of problems? Power fluctuations in the hospital district. Traffic light timing's all screwed up. The cooling systems at Desert Manor Nursing Home went down for 20 minutes yesterday. They had to call ambulances for 3 residents." My stomach dropped. Desert Manor housed 200 elderly residents. In Phoenix heat, 20 minutes without air conditioning could kill someone. "How bad is it really?" I asked. "Bad. Sarah keeps saying your documentation is incomplete, that there are hidden subroutines she can't find. She's been in Sterling's office crying twice today." Crying. The brilliant MIT graduate was crying because she couldn't figure out what a high school graduate with military training had built. "Sterling's telling the board your system was fundamentally flawed," Danny continued. "Says that's why he brought Sarah in originally, to fix your mess before it caused problems." Now I was mad. Not frustrated, not annoyed, genuinely pissed off. Sterling was rewriting history to cover his ass while my life's work fell apart. "Danny, let me ask you something. How many power outages have we had in the past 5 years?" Under your system? Maybe 4 or 5 total, all weather-related, and they never lasted more than 30 minutes. And how many has Sarah had in 4 days? Honestly, I've lost count. That afternoon, I drove downtown to see the damage myself. Traffic lights were cycling wrong at major intersections. Office buildings had flickering power. I saw an elderly man struggling with his electric scooter outside the VA hospital because the charging station wasn't working properly. Local news trucks were parked outside City Hall. A reporter was doing a live broadcast. This is day 4 of what officials are now calling a grid emergency, with no clear resolution in sight. Grid emergency. My system that had run flawlessly for 2 years was now a municipal emergency because Sterling wanted to give his niece a job. That evening, Sarah called again. This time I answered. "Marcus, thank you for... What do you want?" I cut her off. "I need help. The system's completely unstable. I've tried everything I know, but it's like the grid has a mind of its own." It does have a mind of its own. That's how I designed it. That's impossible. Systems can't think. No, but they can learn. They can adapt. They can respond to variables that don't show up in your textbooks. Silence on the other end. "I'm in over my head," she admitted finally. "People are going to die if I can't fix this. Then you better figure it out fast. You're the senior engineer now. Marcus, please. Whatever you want, money, credit, anything. Just help me understand how your system works." What I wanted was my job back. What I wanted was 20 years of loyalty to mean something. What I wanted was for Sterling to admit he'd screwed up. But what I said was, "I'll think about it." Day 5. The breaking point. Friday morning, my phone woke me up at 6 a.m. Mayor Patricia Wilson. "Mr. Hayes, I apologize for calling so early. Could we meet today? It's urgent." I knew Mayor Wilson from the smart grid implementation. She'd been supportive throughout the project, asking good questions and understanding why we needed to do things differently than other cities. "What's this about, Mayor?" "GridTech's system is failing. We've had 2 elderly residents die at nursing homes due to power fluctuations affecting medical equipment. The hospital's backup generators have kicked in 6 times this week. I need to understand what's happening." 2 deaths. My stomach clenched. 2 people were dead because Sterling wanted to play nepotism games with critical infrastructure. "Where do you want to meet?" "Denny's on Indian School Road, 8 a.m. I'll be in the back corner booth." I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed staring at my hands. These were the hands that had built a system designed to prevent exactly what was happening. 2 people were dead because a 29-year-old MBA student thought she could improve on 20 years of experience. When I got to Denny's, Mayor Wilson looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, the weight of a failing city grid written all over her face. "Thank you for coming, Marcus," she said as I slid into the booth. "I'll be direct. GridTech is in breach of contract. Their system is non-functional and people are dying. I need to know if there's any way to fix this." "There is," I said, "but it requires understanding how the system actually works, not how MIT says it should work." "Explain." I spent the next hour walking her through what I'd built. Not the technical details, but the philosophy behind it. How the grid learned from patterns, adapted to real-world variables, responded to subtle changes that conventional systems ignored. "You built an artificial intelligence," she said when I finished. "I built something that thinks like an experienced engineer instead of following rigid protocols." Mayor Wilson leaned back. "Can you fix it?" "I can. But not for GridTech, not for Sterling. Not while they're calling my work a mess and blaming me for their failures." "What if you worked directly for the city?" Now that was interesting. "Work directly for the city," I repeated. "Emergency municipal consulting contract. Bypass GridTech entirely. You fix the grid, we pay you directly, and when this mess is over, we terminate GridTech's contract for cause." Now that was very interesting. "What about the legal issues? GridTech owns the system." Mayor Wilson smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. "They licensed it to us. Right now, they're in material breach of contract by providing non-functional infrastructure. City legal says we have every right to bring in independent expertise to protect public safety." She pulled out a folder. "I had our lawyers draft this last night. Emergency consulting contract, 90 days, renewable. Triple your GridTech salary plus benefits. Triple my salary. That would cover Emma's entire college tuition in one contract." "There's one condition," I said. I want this whole mess documented. I want the board to understand exactly what happened, why the system failed under Sarah's management, and how Sterling's nepotism put people's lives at risk. Done. In fact, I'm meeting with GridTech's board this afternoon. You're welcome to attend. I shook her hand. Let's go fix this mess. The GridTech board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, I walked into that building like I owned it. Same security guard from the day they fired me looked confused but didn't stop me. Muscle memory, I guess. The executive conference room was packed. Board members, Sterling pacing at the front, Sarah sitting rigid in her chair looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Through the glass walls, I could see Sterling presenting charts showing system failures, pointing at graphs that blamed my experimental methodology for the crisis. I didn't go in immediately. Just sat in the waiting area where everyone could see me through the glass. Sterling was in full damage control mode, gesturing at his PowerPoint. The system was fundamentally unstable from the beginning. That's why I brought in Sarah to modernize our approach with proven methodologies. Proven methodologies? Right. 20 minutes in, Sarah stood up. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the room. Sterling tried to interrupt, but the board chair shut him down. Sarah kept talking, occasionally glancing toward where I sat. Whatever she was saying, it wasn't Sterling's prepared script. At exactly 2:47 p.m., a board member opened the door. "Mr. Hayes, the board would like to speak with you." I walked into that conference room like I was reporting for duty. Every head turned. Some curious, some hostile, all desperate. "Thank you for joining us, Marcus," the board chair said. "Ms. Mitchell has been sharing some revelations about recent events." I nodded but didn't speak. She indicates that the current implementation failures are due to misapplication of standard protocols to your adaptive system architecture. She also suggests that your termination was premature. I looked at Sterling, whose face had gone bright red. Premature is an interesting word for firing the one person who understood a multi-million-dollar system without ensuring proper knowledge transfer. "Now see here," Sterling started, but the chair raised her hand. "Marcus, the situation is critical. The city is threatening legal action. 2 people have died. We need solutions." "I agree completely," I said, "which is why I've accepted a position as direct consultant to the mayor's office, effective immediately." The room exploded. Board members started talking over each other. Sterling went white, and the chair banged her gavel. "You've what?" Sterling managed. "The city has exercised its contractual right to engage independent expertise when the primary contractor fails to deliver functional infrastructure. That's... You can't... Actually, he can," said Mayor Wilson, walking through the door with her legal counsel. "As of this morning, the city has formally notified GridTech of material breach. We're exercising our right to engage Mr. Hayes directly." The board chair looked grim. "This is highly irregular. So was firing the creator of a proprietary system without ensuring knowledge transfer," Mayor Wilson replied smoothly. "So was letting people die while your CEO's niece played with systems she didn't understand." Sarah spoke up from her corner. "I tried to tell them. I told Uncle Robert this morning that I was in over my head, that Marcus's system was beyond anything I learned at school. He said to keep trying, that admitting failure would hurt the family reputation." Sterling spun around. "Sarah, that's not..." "It's exactly what you said," she cut him off. "You told me that Hayes was just bitter about being replaced, that his system was unnecessarily complicated, and that any competent engineer could run it. You were wrong about all of it." The silence in that room was beautiful. The board chair cleared her throat. "Mr. Hayes, assuming you can restore functionality, what would prevent this situation from recurring?" "New management," I said simply, "and a recognition that critical infrastructure isn't a place for on-the-job training or family favors. Your system will be fully operational within 72 hours, Mayor Wilson added, under Marcus's direct management, with his own team." "Your team?" Sterling laughed bitterly. "You don't have a team. I will, starting with Danny Rodriguez, who I'm hiring away from you effective immediately." Danny, who'd been sitting quietly in the back, stood up. "I'll take that offer, Marcus. Thanks." 2 hours later, I was back in the GridTech server room, but this time as a city consultant with full authority to fix what had been broken. Sarah stood beside me, looking lost. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I thought I could figure it out. I thought your documentation was just incomplete. My documentation was fine. You just tried to make my system follow rules it wasn't designed for. What can I do to help? I looked at her. Young, smart, completely out of her depth, and finally willing to admit it. You can start by understanding that there's a difference between knowing how something should work in theory and knowing how it actually works in practice. Will you teach me? Maybe. After I save the people your uncle put at risk. The real revenge wasn't watching Sterling squirm in that boardroom. It wasn't seeing the board realize their mistake. The real revenge came 6 hours later when every light in Phoenix came back on steady, when the hospital's backup generators finally shut off, when the air conditioning at Desert Manor stopped flickering. But we weren't done yet. 72 hours later, my system was humming like a well-tuned engine. Power restoration times were back to normal. Emergency response had improved beyond even my original benchmarks. The mayor held a press conference on Tuesday morning. Thanks to the expertise of municipal consultant Marcus Hayes, she announced to the cameras, Phoenix now has the most advanced smart grid system in the nation. Mr. Hayes' innovative approach will serve as a model for cities nationwide. I watched from my new office in City Hall. My office. With my name on the door and a view of the mountains. Danny was setting up his computer at the desk next to mine. Feels good, doesn't it? He said. What feels good is knowing nobody's going to die because some MBA student thinks she knows better than 20 years of experience. My phone buzzed. Emma calling from her mom's house. Dad, I saw you on the news. Mom said you're working for the city now? That's right, kiddo. Direct consultant. Big pay raise, too. Does that mean I don't have to worry about student loans? I smiled. Arizona State, full ride, courtesy of your old man's new consulting contract. I'm so proud of you, Dad. That felt better than any revenge ever could. Later that afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Congratulations. You deserved better than what we gave you. Board Chair, Jennifer Walsh. Then another. Marcus, I'm truly sorry. I learned more in 5 days than 4 years at MIT. If you ever need someone who understands humility now, I'm here. Sarah. And a third that made me laugh out loud. This is bullshit and you know it. Robert Sterling. Sterling's text was followed by a news alert. Grid Tech Solutions CEO Robert Sterling announces resignation amid grid crisis fallout. A month later, I was walking past GridTech's headquarters on my way to a meeting with the Arizona Corporation Commission. They wanted to discuss implementing my system statewide. Through the lobby windows, I could see moving boxes and people clearing out desks. The city contract had been their primary revenue source. Without it, and with the bad publicity from the deaths at the nursing homes, GridTech was finished. The building had a for-lease sign out front. Near the entrance, looking lost, stood Sterling. Our eyes met through the glass. He looked older, defeated. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I didn't smile, didn't wave, just nodded once and kept walking. My team was waiting. 6 engineers now, all people who understood that experience beats credentials every time. 2 months after that, I was sitting in my living room grading resumes for another position when Emma called. Dad, guess what? I got accepted to the engineering program. That's great, honey. Following in your old man's footsteps? Actually, I want to specialize in power systems. Maybe work with you someday. I had to clear my throat before answering. I'd like that. Oh, and Dad, my engineering prof mentioned you in class today, said you're revolutionizing how we think about adaptive systems. He wants to bring his graduate students to tour your facility. That night, I couldn't sleep, but for good reasons this time. I stood on my balcony looking out at the city lights. Every street light, every office building, every hospital and nursing home powered by a system that had my fingerprints on it. A system that would keep running long after I retired because I'd finally found people who understood that engineering isn't just about following rules. It's about solving problems in the real world. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. She'd been texting occasionally, asking technical questions, updating me on her progress at a new job with a smaller company in Tucson. Marcus, I wanted you to know I got promoted to junior engineer today. My boss says I have a different perspective than most new grads. I told him I learned from the best, even if it was the hard way. I texted back, congratulations, keep learning, I will. And Marcus, thank you for not letting me fail completely. You could have, and I would have deserved it. She was right. I could have let her destroy her career completely, let the whole system crash and burn while she struggled. But that's not who I am. You don't let people drown, even when they've tried to push you overboard. The sweetest part of the whole thing wasn't watching Sterling's company collapse. It wasn't seeing my name in the news or getting recognition I should have had years ago. It wasn't even the money, though tripling my salary didn't hurt. The sweetest part was the letter I got from Desert Manor Nursing Home a week later. It was from the families of the residents who'd been affected by the power outages. Dear Mr. Hayes, it started. We wanted to thank you for restoring the power system that keeps our loved ones safe. We understand that your quick action prevented further tragedies. Our grandmother always said the best revenge is a life well lived. Thank you for proving her right. A life well lived. Yeah, that about summed it up. 6 months later, GridTech's building was bought by a tech startup that wanted to hire me as their chief infrastructure officer. I turned them down. I had my own consulting firm now, Hayes Engineering Solutions, with contracts in 12 cities and a waiting list of municipalities who wanted adaptive power systems. Emma started her freshman year at ASU in the fall, debt-free, studying engineering, and proud to tell people her dad built the system that keeps Phoenix running. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is getting fired by people who never understood your worth. Sometimes getting escorted out while they throw a party for your replacement is just the universe's way of clearing the deck for something better. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something so good that everyone can see exactly what they lost when they let you go. My name's Marcus Hayes. I'm 48 years old. And I'm the guy who proved that 20 years of experience beats an MBA from MIT every single time. The end.